Hello and welcome to the Netwürk Chatter, the bi-weekly show dedicated to talking with folks who've contributed to Vast Grimm universe. If you're not familiar, Vast Grimm is the first RPG published by Infinite Black. It's a brutal sci-fi horror setting where each member of your legion is trying not only to survive, but save what is left of humanity. It's compatible with Merkborg and uses their third-party license, and you can find out more about it at vastgrim.com. And the Pledge Manager is still currently open on GameFound. I'm Brian Colin, your host, and I'm also the creative lead for Vast Grimm. Today, I have the amazing pleasure of having two of my friends, Janet and Dimitris, from World Anvil. They also wrote the Omega Protocol, which is part of our Volatile Verse anthology series. Before we get into anything Vast Grimm, first I want to just get to hang out and let both Janet and Dimitris tell you a little bit more about what they do, because they have a long list of credits of accomplishments and things that they do that they will be able to go into much more detail than I will be able to. So, Dimitris, do you want to start?
Yes, of course. I am the one with the smallest list anyway. So, why not? So my name is Dimitris. I am the developer and essentially the founder of World Anvil. I started about 4 years, in fact, 4 years and a half starting World Anvil, which is a world building software. I have for many years in my life been an advanced world builder. I love building worlds, creating them, and simulating reality in either horrible, disgusting, or beautiful and fantastical, depending on what it actually comes into mind. This time was very disgusting and very horrible because my wife contributed to that. Who is especially so disgusting and horrible.
That me?
Yes.
Yes, I sit here in my pretty pink jumper, and nobody knows quite how revolting my brain is.
Absolutely.
There are some really good bits in your story that I'm going to touch on just a little bit later, because there were lots of things that just made me smile with how gross they were.
We had so much fun. We had so much fun.
What about you, Janet?
Oh, yes, I should introduce myself. Hi, I'm Janet. 4 years ago, Dimitris made me an anvil, a world anvil. It's awesome, and now I run it. So I do the community side. We run world building challenges, writing challenges, RPG challenges, discussions. We do interviews.
Give advice.
We give advice and all of that kind of fun stuff. So that's my role in World Anvil, as well as sort of keeping the ship going and doing all the boring behind the scenes stuff. And then apart from that, I'm a published fantasy author. I'm an RPG author. I've written for Cobalt Press. I've written for Tidebreaker RPG, and of course for you guys. And recently I also was the lead author on the Dark Crystal RPG, which was mega fun. And I'm also a gamer, a performer. So I've performed for Wizards of the Coast and Modifius and Weird Games and a bunch of other cool folks playing, performing
Everything.
RPGs, basically. Yeah. Everything from crazy French rogues to mad mermaids, basically. That's kind of the space I roll in. So yeah, I love games, I love stories, and it was so much fun to write this for the Vast Grimm world. Yeah. It was just amazing.
Well, thank you. You both have a really great roster of things that you've done, and I've known you both since when World Anvil was in its beta phase before it actually launched, when it was just a baby. And it's amazing to see how well you have grown your community and how much you support the RPG community along with the writing community. It's just wonderful to see it, and I know you recently just had your 4th birthday for World Anvil, which is fantastic. It's really awesome to see how you both can make something so big and so important to so many people. With role-playing specifically, can you tell me a little bit about how each of you got into RPGs? Everybody has a different origin story, with so many people now joining us in our nerddom and people that have been playing for years and years. It's always exciting to hear different people's quests on how they came into it.
Absolutely. I think that my quest started a bit prematurely. So I started in RPGs in a very young age, the age of 8. Because I was the only one who can speak English from my friends, and we went in a store that was normally selling Magic the Gathering and Warhammer 40k, and that's what they were playing. They were playing with models, and then we saw the 2nd edition D&D book, and they couldn't know what it was about. They just smelled nice and it was full of interesting things, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool!" And I started reading, and they're like, "Oh, you can read it." you want to play? Yes. And then they bought me the books in order for me to read them and then become the game master. That's how I started very early.
Game master by force. This is what I'm hearing here.
The thing is that my journey in gold building started even earlier, because the reason they asked me to play and game master for them is because from a very young age they knew I write my own worlds and I loved actually writing stories, and then for them it was a natural thing. You know what? You write stories. This is about storytelling. Here you are. Make it work. So yeah, essentially yes, that's how it started very early.
That's wonderful. And
so
what about you, Janet?
I started actually just a few years later. So my older sister played Dungeons and Dragons. My older sister is 5 years older than me, naturally the coolest person in the entire universe.
Of course.
So because she was playing Dungeons and Dragons, or I think she only really played a couple of times, but because she was playing, I was like, I have to know what this is. So a group of friends and myself got together, and I predictably played an elven mage, of course. What is everybody's first character? And I was hooked, and I freaking loved it. And we played a bunch of sessions. We had crazy adventures that were completely inappropriate for kids our age, which was the best thing about it, right?
Yes.
And then I changed schools, and it just kind of fizzled away, until I met this one. And he said in this sort of very sort of nonchalant way, "Oh, and I also play Dungeons and Dragons, but like I know that you won't be into that." And I was like, "Wait, tell me more."
That's fantastic. And right then you knew that it was time.
It was destined.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So we picked up Pathfinder. We picked up 2.5, and then I went straight to Pathfinder from that because it's crunchy and we like it.
Yep.
It was all systems go from there. Like I've always written and I've always world built and I've always told stories, but RPG was always something really special. It was something I lost and found again, and that was something really special for me.
It is very interesting that Janet says it's all systems go from there. Interestingly enough, the moment that Gold Anvil became a thing, I stopped playing and Janet started playing even more than I did.
That's true.
Because Janet was invited in games.
In all the streamed games.
In all the streamed games. And I had no time apart from coding Gold Anvil. So you know what? For the last 4 years, I literally played only when my good friend said, "Oh, Dimitris, come here, play with us on stream for a bit." I was like, "Okay, thank you very much," kind of thing.
That's not true. I run you games sometimes.
Sometimes.
Well, with that being said, Dimitris, since you started out having to read the books for your friends, did you always stay in the GM role?
I'm still there.
Yeah.
As I said, I have played 4 or 5 times during the last 5 years because people are inviting me as a player. But this is the first time in my life I play as a player. I was always and I will always be a game master, I think. I don't think that will ever change for me.
No.
Hashtag forever GM.
Yes. I'm in the same boat as you are. But I prefer to GM. I like being able to do multiple things.
Bossy not to.
What's that? I'm sorry?
I said, too bossy not to.
Right. Yeah. The control. Yes. I haven't played Vast Grimm yet. I've only run it. Which is crazy.
God, that must be rectified.
We need to change this.
Yes.
So, but it sounds like wonderful beginnings. Over the years, have you played a lot of different systems, or have you mainly stuck with like the D20 systems?
So, to tell you the truth, in fact, I haven't even started with D&D, although I did play 2nd edition to begin with and we started the career. The apogee of my very young years were the fact that I have made one of my friends literally Peter Pants by playing Call of Cthulhu, because I love horror. And I love making my friends Peter Pants. It's one of my favorite. Like I'm very sadistic.
Metaphorically, not necessarily.
Yes, yeah, of course.
That was literally, just so we're clear. Okay. But I'm a very huge sadist, and that's why I want to control everything as well. So
it's all coming out here, guys.
I have played a lot of Call of Cthulhu, and then after that, I have transitioned into Vampire the Masquerade, which I helped actually with the Mind's Eye Theater for Balkans and Eastern Europe for about 5 years. So I actually focused a lot on D10, White Wolf system kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then D&D, in fact, I had a pass-through with Pathfinder for a little bit, which I ran for my friends. I played with Alternity, which almost nobody knows what it is. Mm-hmm. It's the predecessor of D&D D20 Modern, but it's not D20 system, just the predecessor of that kind of thing. And then we moved to Pathfinder with Janet for a bit. And Pathfinder 2. I had one session of D&D 4th edition before I realized that this is not going to happen ever.
Not the game for you.
Right?
Yes. that's not going to happen. And then I came back to 5th edition because everybody found it easy, and I realized, oh, this is what all people do that don't have any time. They play 5th edition because it's easy and quick.
You don't need to spend every weekend and school break and spending the entire time playing. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah.
The Mind's Eye Theater that you mentioned, was that the LARPing, or was that the table? Okay.
Yeah. So essentially that was the global LARPing, and I was an official storyteller for Eastern Europe. One of the 5.
That's fantastic. The first LARP I got to play in was a White Wolf Run game in Georgia for their annual. Before I lived in Georgia in the U.S., I lived like 12 hours away, and me and 3 carfuls of friends caravan down in 3 cars to be the only Sabbat pack at this annual thing LARP at this hotel that they put on. And it was the craziest experience, and the first time I'd ever done something like that, and I loved it.
It was crazy because I was playing Italy every weekend. Like every Friday for 5 years, I would be in a club which essentially was transforming itself for us. No, Thursday, sorry. It was transforming for us as an Elysium, and effectively I was there, and even the walls knew me. Like literally, I mean, like all the walls knew me. They were saying hello to me.
That's great.
I was playing Malkavian, by the way. It's just...
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. Very cool. Janet, and you told your story about how. So, were there any other RPGs thrown in there, like in the mix for you, outside of what you had mentioned?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love exploring new RPGs and new rule sets. I think it gives a great depth to the game, and it's like as a game designer, which is obviously something that I do as a job. I think it's really important to be familiar with lots of different systems because they have so much to bring to the mix, right? Like if you just do D&D and you just design D&D, that's fine if that's what you want to do. But I love looking at systems like the weird game system, and looking at things like Alternity, looking at like all of these different systems that bring other things into the mix. I think
we're making our own.
Yeah, we are also developing our own RPG system right now.
Fantastic.
So I think it's so rewarding to read through and look at other systems. And I recently did an interview with part of the team from Magpie Games from the Avatar: The Last Airbender, and it was so interesting talking about the ways that they've created, like sort of gamified the main elements of the world and brought them into the game in a very real way. And I think that's something that is really important. If it's important enough to the world and it's important enough to the story, it should be part of the system.
I think it's something we were discussing when we were developing the Omega Protocol, about the fact that what we liked about Vast Grimm is the fact that the system of the game actually represents the world in the best way possible.
And
like it's
made
made
the genre.
for the genre,
Exactly.
It's made for the system. And that was very important to us because, and we discussed it a lot in very goal building streams, that systems, yes, can be global and generic, like for example, the 5th edition system, but systems who are created for specific games, specific genres, always succeed in bringing really the feeling of the game faster and easier, closer to the player, and the roles actually say something. It's not just to hit. It's actually, like to prevent whatever this might be, like for example, being overtaken by something that is part of the game.
Souls,
exactly,
whatever like that. Exactly. I love. It's no secret that I'm a big fan of Cobalt Press and a big fan of the Cobalt Guides. And there's a very astute essay in there from Wolfgang Bauer who talks about the fact that the reason that game designers come back to Call of Cthulhu all the time is because the horror is in the system. It's built into the system. It's something that Cubicle 7 did very nicely. Oh, there's another system I forgot about. Cubicle 7's system for the Adventures of Middle-earth.
Yes.
Where again, they've built in
the journey system, right?
The journey system, basically they have sanity points in a way, because the sort of despair that comes over you. All of this stuff, I think it sets an RPG apart. If the system is perfectly blended to the setting and the system furthers the feeling of the setting. I think that's beautiful. I think that's something that Vast Grimm did really well. That's something we were really impressed with.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
No, really. I mean, Brian was really good to me.
Yeah, it was like...
And I can't wait for the adventure to come out, actually, because when it comes out, I want to play it with our guys with our team.
Yes, I got excited.
That.
Sorry.
Yes. I'm looking forward to getting to play test it as well. Once I have the map built out, then I'll be able to play test it with our core group, which will be a lot of fun. So talking about the system that you're developing, is it focused around a certain world or setting that you two have already created?
Yeah, actually, we are creating it. This is my world of Lyra, which actually the whole point behind Lyra is that everything we know of, including the long dead ancients, the planet itself, the moons, the sun, are creatures who had so much will to become what they are that actually manifested it. And that's actually the whole base of the system. Actually, the whole system is about the fact that in this world, will can be manifested and become reality.
Okay, very cool.
So every player, everyone who plays essentially a character in the world is what we call attuned, which actually means that they have the ability to tap into this power. And the more engaged they become, and more fascinated, and
Driven,
more and driven, and more actually focused they are on what they're doing. Like, for example, if they are driven about becoming the better sharpshooter, whatever this might be, slowly as they become better, their will starts to creep in and enhance their ability. So there's not a magic in this world because everything is magic. Like, you know what they say when, for example, a mother is known to be able to lift the whole car if their child is underneath
With
the
the
car.
adrenaline, yeah.
So imagine that, but this is the difference that if you are actually focusing, for example, in shooting bullets, at some point your bullets will start curving to hit the target because you know you are on with the bullet, you feel it, you want to be the best it can ever be, and that starts manifesting in who you are, kind of thing. So the system itself, of course, had to be made to have all the focus about necessarily
all the focus about willpower, essentially,
willpower
and projects and self-development and drive and all of that stuff.
And then the world building on the other side took the same essentially concept, and then actually we moved towards something I believe it's very horrifying, although very fantasy. The fact that in this world, because there is actually a world like, for example, medieval
feudal system,
everybody has replaced their sternum with a hole that they put a crystal in. And this crystal literally every day sips 1/5 of the power that you're making. So literally they're taking their toll on you. They're actually taking money out of you by sucking your energy every day. So they take out this crystal and they take the energy, and you pay your fees like that.
And this is how they keep the population down, which is how they keep a sort of political control, because they're literally extracting your energy as taxes.
And they use it to subdue you. So actually,
not to be too political, but we were like, this is both medieval era and corporate America. Interesting.
That's fantastic. I dig that a lot. I think that's got a lot of really good seeds for ideas on ways people could take a campaign.
Yeah. So other than that, it's a world of flying islands. We often liken it to tropical, like an Amazonian tree frog. It's bright and it's beautiful, but it's lethal, right? So it's a dangerous place to be, but it is incredibly bright and incredibly fantastical. There are flying islands, flying ships. There are
you have airships. You are pirate in a Pirates of the Caribbean tropical paradise.
Towers that throw rainbows across. Like it's a very magical place in many ways. It's a very spectacular place, but it's also science fantasy.
Yes.
Yep. Are there any people that harvest the crystals out of people, or that have or that maybe have like a ward of people laying in beds that... What's that?
So the Empire has literally a cult of women and protectors of these women that literally go around and they go and say, okay, it's 8 o'clock in the morning, everybody go in line.
Come pay your dues.
Come pay your dues.
Yeah.
And they know who you are. They have massive books that they have everybody recorded there. And effectively, that's the whole point. The New World is just discovered, and people now are trying to escape the New World and try to find freedom and find a way to go out of this thing. So it's actually quite a very
hopeful.
It's a very hopeful world, but also it's a very painful world in many ways, because we talk about things that are very hard as topics, like the abuse of other people, slavery,
power,
subjugation. We talk about actually also things like global change and climate change, because there is a climate change happening in the world that actually changes everything like that. So when I write stories, I always want to actually not just create something pretty, but create something that really means something to me, that is important, and find ways for people to experience it through the game and gain more by playing into it. Like, it's one thing to actually talk to you about, for example, how is it to be a minority that is being abused. Another thing to actually you find yourself as the minority being abused and having to deal with it and understand the troubles of these people from a first-hand basis, kind of thing.
Cool. I think that sounds like a great setting, and I'm looking forward to seeing the system that you put out, because I think that'll be fantastic.
Me too.
So we talked just a little bit about the Omega Protocol and the adventure that you wrote for the Volatile Verse, and about, I can't wait to start laying it out, which I haven't gotten to yet just because so many little things. But within the aside from just the adventure, there were a handful of tables that you included in it, which I think are really wonderful. The Monstrous Vermin table, the Robot Servants table, and the Cultist table. Like, I think that's where I really got quite a few smiles on my face. For anybody that's familiar with Vast Grimm, there's a lot of ways to have random tables for NPC or character generation and things like that. And on the Cultist table, it helps break down different members that worship the worms themselves. And one of them, it was for the brain worm for Nurok, a description that was used was that they're open-minded, doesn't begin to describe these brainiacs, whose skulls are open at the top. Their brain is protected with a neon yellow fungal goo which drips down their faces. The little details that you put in when working out the cultists were just wonderful. The one with the gut and all the little pieces that just made them extra gross were really brought me into the setting, because for me that's how horror is. Horror is like 1980s gross and disgusting.
We spend a lot of time out arguing, but actually like working between us and bouncing ideas,
discussing and refining.
Because what we found with Vast Grimm is that the setting itself is very unique, which actually meant for us from the beginning that there wouldn't be any way to say to somebody, oh, it's like, for example, Lord of the Rings, because no, it's nothing like Lord of the Rings or any other fantasy like science fiction you have played before. So we wanted, when we created something, to make sure that it really seeps out the setting. Like, if there is no way you're going to get an encounter without actually feeling the encounter, because it's all over you. Like the same thing, that was
like
very
fungal
important.
yellow goo.
Yeah. Or even, for example, if I remember correctly, for the was that for the brain from the bloodworm, so actually we try to in fact bring it as closer as possible to that. Talk about actually the fact that they are actually love blood so much that they actually like
they wash themselves in it.
Exactly. Because if you are really a believer of something so fundamental and so gross, of course you know it's gross, you have to become one with it. Like the passionate people who will become essentially the people who will be following this thing should be completely and utterly into it. I was thinking more like when we were watching Mad Max.
Yes.
Like that
exactly.
That was the thing I had in mind. Like okay,
there's such an intensely distilled version of the concept.
Exactly.
That's where we were coming from. We were like, these people are, it's not just dialed up to 11, it's dialed up to 20 freaking 1, right? Like, it's, you take the concept, and we saw this all the way through Vast Grimm. It was the concept, neon, bright, and then more. And we were like, this is what the adventure should be.
We said that so many times when we were doing the tables, like, okay, that is good.
Now more.
Now more. We have to go one step further, kind of thing.
Yeah. So particularly the cultists was a really fun thing, because there's the flesh, the blood, the brain, the heart, the gut, and the spinal worm. Yes, I have them in front of me.
Yes. Yep.
And going through them, we were like, this is such a great chance to differentiate our bad guys. Let's do this and make it epic. Do you know what I mean?
And you did it so well. And I'm very excited to see where that page spread goes as far as art direction, and see how nasty and vile we can make that.
If I do not see a gutworm cultist with a barbecue fork, I will be very disappointed, because that was my favorite thing in the entire table. Dimitris laughed so much he literally rolled backwards on his chair and almost fell out of it.
I do.
I'm writing down barbecue fork now, so I remember. And who knows? Maybe that becomes like an ancillary product that we sell with like a
barbecue fork.
Worm not included.
But I think a lot of the work we've done with the tables, because when we're thinking about it, first of all, we love the fact that the setting itself has so many tables, and we actually
it gives so many options, so much replayability.
We were thinking that it's gonna be either a matter of replayability, or effectively trying to give to the storyteller assets to use later on the game. Okay, you're not using this adventure, but if you have actually an idea of how this might be, you can use it later on.
Yeah, I need more cultists. Let's go look at that table.
Yes.
Yeah, but the other thing is that it's my favorite thing with tables, and I do this for everything. The Dark Crystal, for example, was full of tables, and I always write roll on the table or choose, which means that the DM can go through and be like, actually, we've been talking a lot about X, so I'll use Y.
Mhm.
Or on the other hand, this character seems to have an aversion to this thing, so let's bring it in, right? Which is how horror works.
Yep.
Or even I've been telling a story with this theme, that thing would fit perfectly.
Yeah.
So it just gives so many options, and providing options is it's also a really good way to get the GM's brain moving and sort of thinking about options.
But I think that even reading these kind of things as a whole, like even if as a storyteller I would say, you know what, I'm going to read through the adventure before I play it. What I really wanted to do when we're writing it, with the help of Janet, because Janet is actually the one who makes the pretty words.
I do the words.
I just do the concept. It was that we wanted, by finishing the reading the how many pages it's going to be, to really sit with the feeling, okay, that's how it is to be in a bar in this place, because this is the kind of people you're gonna see, or this is how moving through an abandoned site looks in this world, kind of thing. Because we wanted to actually give spectacles and give inspiration for artwork, or inspiration for the storyteller to actually know how to walk towards this area in this planet, because we specifically wanted to talk about the frozen planet there. And we know, by the way, the concept of the flying islands made of multiple spaceships.
Yeah, like the rafts.
Absolutely gorgeous. Like I love that. I really love it. Like I have a very distinct image in my head, which nobody probably else has, but it's something that I really love. Like the idea that having these floating islands in the caverns of a frozen world, it's extremely evocative. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I was really excited when you both came to me with the idea and asking about building off of just the little bit that was already written for Marauder's Cryosphere, because that's one of the things with me just being just wanting to GM all the time. I don't want everything completely written out for me. I want other people to just take that little sentence or two and then build off of it and be inspired by it to create their own thing. So it's really fun getting to see where you took that, because then that will become canon, and then that's like, okay, this is all like really part of the setting now.
Well, it's worth saying that we went in a really weird direction, and you were completely okay with it. So when we
let's not give it out, of course. But
when we first started talking with Brian about the idea that we had for the Omega Protocol, and again, Brian can talk, fill in the details and decide what level of information to release.
Anybody that's watching now, if there may be some spoilers, we're not going to go into a whole lot of detail about what's in the adventure, because we want to make it so that you'll enjoy it.
We stayed quite far away so far. I think we're okay.
We talked about something from earlier times, and we were like, okay, well, we've if you're familiar with Vast Grimm, of course, there's this sort of primordial age, where like the super old stuff came from, and we were like, okay, if we're dealing with a slightly different old period, ancient period, we should skin it differently. It shouldn't have the same architecture. It shouldn't have the same feeling. And we came to the idea of, oh my god, what if it has like an ancient Greek feel? I think it's obvious that it's called the Omega Protocol, right? And that one of the reasons it's called Omega is because it's pulling on a lot of ancient Greek stuff. And when you do read the adventure, finally, you'll see there's a lot of I don't want to say Easter eggs, but a lot of references essentially to ancient Greece. Some of them are funnier than others. Some of them are more obvious than others. And introducing ancient Greece to post-apocalyptic cyberpunk space horror was not an obvious yes.
Not even for us.
Yeah, we were like, would this be okay? It's really weird.
Well,
and you were like,
the planet's frozen, so who knows what it was like prior to freezing.
And that's what we thought.
That's why we went there.
We went there because we're like, look, I don't want to go further away from the planet. Let's stick with the planet and let's try to create effectively some, as you said, like little sentences that then the people can take and play on this planet, like essentially to find out what else is in there or where it is coming from. And we're not really sure, but we'll say, you know what? If we're not write it, nobody else will. So you know what? We're gonna give it a try. And if Brian is up for it, that's fine.
Yeah. But we thought this was such a ridiculous, insane idea, and you were like, write it, do it. Ancient Greece in my space cyberpunk horror apocalypse.
And who knows why it was built like that? You know, if you dig even deeper, maybe it was maybe it was a Greek amusement park, like something even crazier that you build on top of.
A revival project, like I said, it's not ancient
neoclassicism.
Exactly. Somebody discovered it 1,000 years ago. He was very intrigued and very rich, and he decided to, in fact, like renovate or essentially like force his stylistic choices in the rest of the planet because he owned part of it, kind of whatever this might be.
Yeah. So there's a lot of origin story that you you can decide. But yeah, as a flavor, it was a slightly weird one, but I'm really happy we went there.
Yeah, I'm happy you did too, because it definitely takes it in a completely different direction than other directions that the guest writers have done, which has been wonderful to see where people's imaginations go that are not on the path that my imagination would like normally go to.
Yeah.
So with that, I'll read a little snippet from the story just to give people a little bit more of a taste of the Omega Protocol. And this was just part of the narrative that's in there. To most, the Omega Protocol is a children's tale. To a few, a madman's dream. To the worms, a source of fear. But no one believed it was real, until Professor Van Eisenschlau uncovered Lab Nix. That's just a little taste of what's in there, and it's very exciting. I think there's going to be a lot of play out of this one adventure. That no matter how Legionnaires go when going into this area, there's so much that can be done with it.
Yeah, we definitely wanted to have it as something that can be used as a campaign seed if the players are interested.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So something that can set your players off in a different direction or can kick off a campaign.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think we've worked on it. I feel that in the end of the adventure, we wanted to build it as something that can be continued, or at least to give, again, as Janet said, a seed that might be provided essentially to become a campaign. But I think also the adventure itself is a lot of places that can go really the other way, which is perfectly fine, because we were not trying to build a dungeon
or a railroad, right?
We were trying to build an environment and a plot that people can or may not want to interact with, or take completely the other way around, which is perfectly fine as well.
Yep, because you never know where players are going to take things. You play on all this, and then they go that way. So which is great. So aside from your own RPG, do you have any other future RPG work coming up that you can talk about?
That's a good question. I've just finished some work for the Tiebreaker RPG on world building tables, which was really fun. Setting creation is something that I really enjoy. So I created a whole bunch of D66 tables for crazy mashup settings and genres and set like adventure themes. Essentially, it's very, very cinematic. So that was a really fun thing to work on, very big. I have a novel to write finally. Since November last year, I've had RPG after RPG after RPG on my plate, and I keep looking at my novel being like, I know, baby, I know you're there. I'm so sorry.
I can't imagine, because it's such a different writing style. Like, there's no way I could ever try and write any sort of novel. That's just, I see pictures and words don't make pictures for me. Like there's zero way I could do anything like that. So I can't imagine, especially if you were trying to do them at the same time and switch your brain to accommodate.
Janet's actually very good at this. Extremely good at this. I'm very surprised always, because I have the same problem with you. In most cases, when I try to actually write something, I write very contrived, or essentially very, very thick,
very lean,
very leanly, exactly. While at the same time, Janet can write like massive paragraphs and everything, like, to expand as much you can imagine. And for me, it's more about narrative. Like, you see images, Janet sees massive amounts of text and can actually expand. And I see stories, like told stories, like literally telling the story. That's how I actually write, which is very difficult.
Yes.
For me, I think the challenge is always capturing the right style. So you read that little pithy sentence earlier. Open-minded doesn't begin to explain these brainiacs because they've got the open head, right? Like the little sunroof. That's something that made sense for this RPG, because when I was reading through the RPG, one of the things that I was focusing on was, okay, what's the voice? What's the style? How's it written? Is it referring to second person or third person or first person? And so, it's on the one hand it's very colloquial, and on the other hand it's quite witty. And so I really tried to capture that when I was writing it. But my novel project, for example, is 18th century fantasy. So it's completely different narrative style. And then on the other hand, the project I wrote before that was The Dark Crystal, where again the narrative style is different because it's much cleaner, it's much more invisible as a narrative, as a writing style. So I think for me, like making sure that you're doing justice not just in the way that your ideas are going on the page, but the way your words are going on the page. I think that's something that for me is very important because if I wrote Vast Grimm in the way that I write an 18th century fantasy novel, which I describe as basically Jane Austen meets Indiana Jones, like that's a very different space. If I write the same kind of prose, it's not going to convey what I want. Just like if you do a different art style, it's not going to convey what you want. So I think for me, like that, capturing the voice is something that I see very much as part of my job, and it's very different project.
It is very interesting because that is something I don't have. I have to say that. I mean, I'm trying and I'm learning a lot from Janet, but Janet can use words like tactical warheads. Like she knows which word to put where in order not to just say what she's supposed to be saying, but also to say something that will make double the impact of whatever it is that you're saying. So in a very small amount of like 10 words, you can have more meaning that you would have if I have written them, which I would have to expand in 2 paragraphs to say what Janet can say in 10 and make it like more like consolidated horribleness, for example.
I'm very good at horribleness. I don't know. I don't watch horror. Horror is not a movie genre that I enjoy. It's not a book genre that I enjoy. Pen goes to paper. Oh my god, horror is what comes out every time.
Yeah, I can't watch the really terrifying horror movies, like the suspense ones that make like I'm too old for that. I don't need to be stressed out over.
You have a lot of it already.
Right.
No, you're absolutely right. I think, and that's the thing. But like, I remember the projects that Janet has done during the last 3 years, and the truth of the matter is that whenever people were coming back with feedback, was to cut down the horribleness pretty much.
I did some terrible things to podlings, guys.
Oh yes,
Probably
I can't wait to read some of them, or what didn't get cut from it.
Yeah. What did you say, sorry, Brian?
Oh, I can't wait to read what didn't get cut from what didn't get cut. That might be a little bit horrible.
There's still some gross stuff. It's part of the Henson universe, like especially the 80s movie. Like it digs into that, and there's a lot of that in there. Stuff that is, just a little bit like ew, is part of that style. But there was some stuff that did not make it.
Well, that's a really exciting project to be the lead on, and I'm very curious to see it when it comes out because I love that as well. As far as World Anvil goes, do you have any future things that you can talk about that's going to be going on with World Anvil?
I can talk about it all day long and we'll still not be done with it. But I think that the biggest thing we'll be doing with World Anvil right now is, first of all, that we are about to launch for the first time, that's actually something very unique. We are creating a project and a system that will allow you to not only see a map that you have designed about a place, but navigate through also time in this thing. So imagine that you might have, for example, for Vast Grimm, the world as it is right now, the world as it is closer to the end, or the world before the destruction. And you will be able to see a timeline at the bottom that will tell the story of the world, and it will travel from map to map and from location to location, telling you the story by navigating and shifting through maps.
Oh, that's crazy.
So this is something I'm very, very excited about. So it has been a very hard project. We've been working for over a year on this now.
It's brand new software. Nobody's done this.
Yes, exactly.
So it's something that, is, if you're world building, you understand the pain of time and space because you're like, I just built this and then the time moved on and now it's different and it's over there.
So people want to write essentially something we are kind of stuck on a specific time frame. Okay, like you say, like everything happens in this year or within this frame time of like 5 years. Like Pathfinder, for example, is very famous about creating these adventure modules that actually push the year to the next year. It's like push the timeline
like
by
watershed moments, essentially.
Exactly. And for Pathfinder 2 is literally what happened after the, I think, 20 years that passed in the development of Pathfinder, putting them all together, concluding all the adventure paths that were played, and saying, okay, that's the world right now, kind of thing, because that's how they build it. And for me, this is the first step for allowing people to see their world not just in a single time frame, or like slide of time, but also to see at least the history of the world in a more interactive way, and actually finding out where we are going with that and how it was. It's very important. In addition to that, we are about to redesign completely our game mastering tools.
Yes,
Whole
very
Anvil
exciting.
is not trying to be a VTT because
Yeah.
there are so many beautiful VTTs out there. That's not our role.
Mhm.
Our role is definitely theater of the mind, but I see Whole Anvil more like the game master screen.
Mhm.
Not what you say, not what you show to your players, but what you need behind that screen
Mhm.
to have instant access to everything that you need while you're playing the game, or albeit that may notes, stat blocks, your plot lines, images you would like to share to your players, anything that might be effective that you want to have in front of you as a storyteller in literally a click of, like with one finger kind of thing, like to just being able to actually show it, which is very important as well.
Yeah. So, World Anvil, we didn't mention this before, but in addition to being a world building platform, it is a campaign manager as well, system agnostic, so any system. And we have dozens of systems supported with character sheets and stat blocks and stuff. So yeah, it's what we use to run our games, and it's just really great to have all of that world building, all of that homebrew stuff that you've done.
Mhm.
A bunch of SRDs there as well, so you can blend things. So you can be like, okay, this is my homebrew stuff, and this is my SRD stuff, and it's all there, and I'm ready to play. Yeah, it's just really nice. And then it has also session reports and that kind of stuff, which will be upgrading
document
as
what
well.
you've done and where you're going from there. So it's a lot of RPG related things, and then we're in fact redesigning the maps, which actually means that we're going to have the ability to have massive maps. Like we had maps already which are big.
Mhm.
Now we're about
Super maps.
yeah. So we will go from the maximum of 4K that we can definitely do at this point to go to 32,000K, for example.
Wow.
For yes.
Yeah, that's a pretty gigantic map.
Yes, I mean, not many people have this kind of maps, although they're asking for them. I say like, cool, I want to see you creating one of those because trust me, that's not going to be an easy task.
20 years later, still painting trees.
Exactly.
But yeah, so lots and lots of upgrades on what we already do, basically, which is serving game masters, serving novelists,
Mhm.
And helping people not only build in the back, but share stuff with their players and share stuff with their fans. We have a lot of podcasts and streams using World Anvil at this point.
Yes, we do.
So we have a lot of
nice.
people using it to share information and share world building, as well as just to keep track of it. So
we really wanted to make Old Anvil always a place that it won't be only a way for you to personally create your world, but it will also be a way to celebrate your work,
Mhm.
show it to others, and make them engage with it, whatever this might be. Like in my world, for example, something that I do right now, which I'm very excited about, I have decided to split the communication, the information I give to the world versus the game masters and the players.
Mhm.
This is not something you can actually do in a book, because if somebody buys the book, they know the contents of the book, and that's pretty much it. But in my world, for example, when you actually log in, the first thing that they will ask you is actually, are you a player or a game master? And depending on the choice you're going to make there, it will change the way that articles display and what kind of information they give you. Like, for example, for game masters, I will give them plot lines, I will give them tips and hooks and insider information and stat blocks that the players won't know. In fact, the players might have fake information in an article
Right.
that the storyteller will know it's not the truth, but the players shouldn't know that exactly. I mean, when you are opening up, for example, Ravenloft, and you know anything about strategy you're a player, it kind of ruins the game.
Yep.
Yeah, if you see weaknesses, sunlight, holy water, stabby things, and you're like, oh, okay, that's how we solve this problem.
Yep.
Then.
Exactly.
And there's no way for most players to not get out of that mode of thinking.
Exactly. You must be a really, really good player and a very seasoned player to say, you know what, I will ignore everything I know and I will play it as my character would. I'm not saying there are not people who can do it, but it's really hard and also kind of breaks what we were trying to create as game master, which is actually the suspension of disbelief. Exactly.
So
cool. I love that. I think that's great. And I mean, you mentioned a minute ago about celebrating the worlds and things that people create. Your community is amazing for that. Like every time I even like just kind of lurk in the Discord, there's so much going on. There's so many people supporting each other and really helping each other grow and make even better, stronger worlds that they're doing.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we have 1.5 million crazy, excited world builders, GMs, and novelists, and it's just it's so amazing to work with a community like that. Like, I mean, we run so many challenges, and again, like Dimi was saying, like one of the beauties of our community is and this is what so many people have said, is I used to world build by myself in my little hole, and it was very sad. But since I've been sharing my world building in challenges, since I've been sharing it in our critique channels, A, I feel much less lonely, and B, my world building has gone like this in terms of quality. And this is what everyone says, is, by entering challenges, by polishing articles and polishing concepts and putting them out for other people to see, it's such a great way to hone your craft.
And that's the thing, it's the first time, and I'm sorry, I'm not proud, but I'm very surprised because I was never expecting that. It is the first time that world building used to be created for somebody, like, for example, someone who creates an RPG game or somebody who wrote a book, and you would see the effect of it at the end product.
Yeah.
You wouldn't see the whole world building, you see actually what it was published, whatever this might be, in an adventure, or was it in a book.
Yeah.
For the first time, we are actually seeing the development publicly in many cases of actually writing the world building, which actually means that the feedback that you're getting from the community, it makes the product that you're going to have at the end even better, because it has passed through probably 100 eyes of people who gave you feedback on it, because it is unique.
Yeah,
and you can also tell what your fans are excited about, what they're maybe less excited about, what direction you should be leaning. This is such valuable information. This is the stuff that, as a novelist, we go through rounds and rounds of beta readers to try and get this information. And actually it's all there. We can just ask people, and they'll tell you, and they'll be excited to do it.
Many people actually do it on stream, for example. So it means actually they go and get actual feedback live from people, and they write together with them. But what I wanted to say is that we are currently on the final round of the Best of Old Anvil for this year.
Oh my God! Yeah.
We had about 200 people who were brave enough to submit their articles and their work to be, in fact, judged, which means that we had over 4,000 articles that were actually submitted throughout the whole process. We have just finished, and we have announced on our birthday this Saturday the
shortlists,
19 by 5, so about 100 pieces of work essentially that are the finalists.
Yeah, so each category has 5 nominees as the finalists.
That's a lot of articles to go through.
And they were all so painfully good.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I mean, you're one of our judges.
Yes, exactly. But if you see the type of work that was done, some of them are pieces of art by themselves. You see them like, okay, that's not just the fact you've written it. It means that you have actually taken so much time to find the right imagery, the right coloring, to actually, like, to give us, we were discussing before about Vast Grimm, the feeling of the world, not just in letters, but also in color, in imagery,
art, typeface,
in animation,
layout.
in some case, kind of thing. So
it's incredible work. And with now seeing on World Anvil from amateurs, I hate that word, but you know what I mean.
Sure.
World building and layout and production as good as the big companies are creating, at least. And that is awesome to me. I am so happy to have had a part to play in like bringing our craft up. Do you know what I mean? And
you keep seeing all, like, when I was reading the articles that I was going over, seeing how people styled their pages with all the CSS and customizing it to really be their own thing. Like, that's so much bigger than just reading an article on somebody's blog or somebody's Tumblr or something like that. It really brings you into their setting, like you had mentioned, and it really elevates the quality, because you see that and you're already thinking it's a more professional piece just because you're brought in right away.
What really blew my mind is that the last 2 years and a half, we have in fact created a completely new branch of the industry that supports other creators, because the people in Old Anvil who are creating world are starting to hire professionally leveled artists, map makers, editors, CSS creators, illustrators, to work with them in the world. That's something that normally you would need to do at least a Kickstarter or actually publish a book to actually get somebody to do something like that. And now we did it every day, which means that Old Anvil, as a weird consequence, in fact boosted the illustrators, designers, 3D actually animators community out of nowhere, which is amazing. It's incredible to see.
That's wonderful.
Been a ride, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It's worth mentioning, we didn't expect any of this. The origin story of World Anvil, just in a nutshell, is essentially I went to Dimitris and said, I have a 101-page Google document that keeps crashing. This is supposed to be my world building. Help. There must be a better way. And Dimitris was like, I will make you a thing, and the thing was World Anvil, right? Like it was something that we wanted to use ourselves personally, and then our friends said, "Dear God, please put this up. I need this," and so we did. And then turns out 1.5 million other people needed it as well, right?
Exactly. You don't expect, but yeah.
That's so good.
Our community, like World Anvil community, compared to the world, is tiny.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
we are a niche of a niche. Like we're talking about the people who are game masters or players who are technically competent and also have a passion of creating things, because there are many game masters that will never actually touch world building because they love just playing the adventures as they are.
They want to buy adventures and play them.
And there are many
That's
people
fine.
who do that, and that's perfectly fine. Exactly. So we're a niche of a niche, and I'm really happy to say that every time I find somebody new, they are so excited and so happy to find it, because I know, because I am one of them, that you get excited when you find something that actually really can help you do what you want to do all your life, and now you can actually do it. And that's actually great. I think if there is a legacy for World Anvil, this is it. It's the fact that we are trying to help people do things that they couldn't be able to do before and create beautiful things for themselves and their friends.
Yep. I think it's fantastic what you've created, and I know it's just going to keep growing from here. We've hit the 1 hour mark. So is there any last closing things that you would like to say before I read through my little news tidbits and outro stuff that I must give to our viewers?
I can't wait to see your artwork for adventure. I'm super excited. I literally cannot wait. I want to put it like in big, beautiful banners on our house and being able to see it, honestly.
Yeah, we are so hyped for this thing. We had so much fun putting it together with all of those weird little Easter eggs and bizarre, monstrous vermin, all the fun stuff we put in there. I will say, if you haven't checked out Vast Grimm, check it out. But you're here, so you probably have. If you haven't checked out World Anvil, check it out. It can help you. It can help you world build better. It can help you share stuff with your players.
Or expand Vast Grimm.
Or expand Vast Grimm.
Yes.
Why not?
Absolutely.
You can find us worldanvil.com, or we're at World Anvil everywhere. We have a YouTube channel at World Anvil where you can find world building tips and DM tips. And
every Friday, Saturday, we go live and we give advice about map making and about world building and about
over on Twitch.
Yes,
and that's twitch.tv/World Anvil. So come find us. We're friendly and we want to talk.
Yes. You should go track them down. All right. So to wrap things up, before we get going, where did it go? I lost it. Hey, if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and follow Infinite Black wherever you like to tap into the network. Next Wednesday, we will be playing another episode of Radical Terror. I will be GMing our Vast Grimm actual play, episode 4. If you want to see what a game of Vast Grimm is like, that would be a great place to start. And the following week, we will return with another episode of the Netwürk Chatter. Vast Grimm is available as a PDF both on itch and drive-thru. Physical copies can still be pre-ordered on GameFound, or check out vastgrimm.com. Until next time, keep the network buzzing.